Who let the dogs out? Who? You got Steve from the Berkshire Blag, and I'm here today to meet Danny, the Lisbon kid, and we're going to be talking about production, philosophy, Portugal, and all that jazz. Don't forget, hit the like button, subscribe to the page, and also you can find us on Facebook under the Berkshire Blag. Come on, let's do this.
How long have I lived in Berkshire? Well, so I was actually born in Buckinghamshire, in Farnham Common. A lot of people think I was born in Portugal. That's not true. I went to school in Buckinghamshire as well, Farnham Royal. I was born in Farnham Common, and it was at the age of 5 when I learnt how to speak English, because at that time we only spoke Portuguese at home. I live in Berkshire now. But I guess most of my working life is in London, East London, and well, East and West London, sort of around Ladbroke Grove and in Hoxton in Shoreditch. I lecture there, and I do a lot of music work in West London. I've just recorded a new pretty hip indie band in Lynch Mob which is in Scrubs Lane, West London. It's where Gallagher and Primal Scream and stuff recorded. Neve Desk, beautiful place. So most of my working life is in London. This is kind of more sort of dormitory for me, really. But I do have my studio here at home where I finish everything that I start in other studios. The plus points of living here would be really, for me, really easy. The communication network is brilliant. And especially when Crossrail happens, I mean, it's going to be so easy. 27 minutes into Liverpool Street. I sound like an estate agent. Yeah, and obviously working abroad a bit, 10 minutes from Heathrow, that's what I really like. The fact that when you get home knackered, you're only 10-minute cab ride home. I was supposed to be in Ibiza last weekend, but I actually decided to do a sort of corporate gig thing. 2 reasons. I'm a bit of a corporate whore, and I find Ibiza quite challenging for me because I feel really lonely there, because people I don't know a lot of people. I'm not really, my history isn't really, despite what people think, it's not very dance oriented, so I don't know a lot of people in that world. Yes, I've had some, hits with dance records, but that's been by default rather than by design. I mean, the success we had with people like with the Full Monty record, for example, that wasn't planned. It was a record that was made for the Full Monty, and it happened to explode particularly in the dance, or rather the sort of gay dance area, the LGBT scene, and much to the chagrin of certain people at Full Monty. But yeah, it was Carl Cox who started playing it at Love Muscle, and then it went from there to San Francisco, Mardi Gras, and Melbourne Mardi Gras. So it became a big record in that particular scene. But again, everything I've done, I think virtually everything I've done has happened through luck. There's a set of events that make things happen. Things need to be in the right place, stars need to align, and all that kind of stuff. But I would say that, and I've said this before, I said this in an interview the other week for Portuguese telliers, the harder I work, the luckier I get. But it's you can't plan a career in music because there's so many, and it's gone through so many changes now that I think anybody that thinks they're in charge of their own destiny is going to be seriously disappointed. Sarah from Saint Etienne is from Old Windsor, so we'd known each other for a long while, and for the first Lisbon Kid album, we had quite a few guests. Hafdís Holt, who's an Icelandic folk singer, who I just loved because she brings that sort of strange Björk type accent to everything, and it sort of immediately makes things sound far cooler in India, and far cooler, certainly far cooler than I am. And people like Lisa Bilson, who's quite she's a really great indie sort of country singer, Queen of Hearts, and I wanted something a little bit more laid back. And her voice is a lot more laid back, and I've known Sarah and her husband Martin Kelly, who ran Heavenly Records and now Heavenly Film and Heavenly Publishing, and I'd done quite a few things with him, and so it was very, very easy to do this. Sarah's a mate, and she came here and we co-wrote this thing together, and she did the vocal in about, I don't know, half an hour or something. She's just with Sarah, you really know what you're going to get. She sounds like the record as soon as she walks in the room. So charity work, I don't like to talk about charity work. Does a lot of work for charity, doesn't like to talk about it. No, so recently I've got into motorcycling, quite late, if you like. I used to ride fizzies round and what have you, and nicked motorbikes and what have you, my mates had. And then recently, going into London a lot, and the amount of traffic, it was taking me up to 2.5 hours to get into East London. So 5 hours a day in a car was driving me mad, so I decided to get a bike, and that bike thing got more and more addictive, and I got more bigger bikes, and I now have a 1200 BMW, which is insane. And this year I decided to ride from the ride was from Windsor to Azedão, which is about half an hour south of Lisbon, where I have a house where I go and write stuff and start a lot of pre-production, what have you. And just before I decided to do this with a mate of mine, I saw an advert on telly where these kids were suffering from, African kids were suffering from something called trachoma, which is an infection of the eye that is similar to chlamydia, spread by flies, and their eyelids, predominantly the bottom eyelids, swell up to the point where their eyelashes turn inside out. So they're in constant pain, 24 hours, 7 days a week, unless it's treated. And it gets so bad that these little kids try to pull out their eyelids. And I just found it completely heartbreaking. And more so when I found out that only antibiotics course that costs about 50p would sort the problem, or some really, really super simple surgery that only requires local anaesthetic. So I decided to do that, and I think I've raised enough now for something like 2,500 kids. So it's been really, really worth it. I think I've got a lot of, to be quite honest, a lot of local influences. When I was a kid, so there was, myself, Tim from Republica, Johnny Mail, Republica, and Metro Trinity and Sensation, brilliant writer, and Cheap Clue he did. In fact, himself, me, and Pete Smith, who was also a local producer, and we did lots of. We were a production team called Petrol Station for a while, and we did lots of different things. I mean, I remember even doing music for the Chippendales and stuff through Andrew Leighton Pope, who's a local promoter and an agent. Sarah, Andrew Weatherall. So all of those things. I think that my formative years, it's really curious that so many of those people went on to be successful. It was enormously competitive, I think. Mickey Bunn, bless him, great writer as well. But the creation of music was of local music was a really big thing. Although we didn't do that much locally, people went and started acting globally and having success outside of just the sort of our more local remit. But I think they're probably my biggest influences in terms of wanting to get things moving and seeing those people as sort of acolytes and people to that to aspire to work like, if you like, and then outside of that, just in the broader sense, I guess when I was a kid I really learnt my songwriting craft from people like Stevie Wonder, and especially the more concept periods of his creation, things like The Secret Life of Plants and Original Musicarium, and those more conceptual things that he had, a lot of country and folk, and I think that goes back to the sort of more pathos, nostalgic, melancholic sort of styles. I remember picking up, was seeing Chad Jackson, and in the days when he was DMC DJ, and knowing about his past history as world DJ mixing champion, and seeing all these other DJs really happen, and I thought something could happen. At the time I was doing A&R, making records, producing records, and also looking after a couple of people, and I said to him, I think we could do something. We had a chat, we decided to work together, and the first thing we did was a remix of the 900 number, and I remember that handing it in and them not being happy with it because they felt that it didn't really lend itself as a remix of 900. It was too different. I remember going through my Aswad record collection and what have you, and anyway we did this record at Scratch in Surrey, and like I say, them not being too happy with it, and then suggested that we would release it, or they would release it as a Chad Jackson release, which for me was great. It's like, yeah, okay, let's go. And we did that, and I think it got to number 2 or something, just picked at the post by the England team or something, or New World or something, I can't remember, maybe, yeah. Anyway, it exceeded our expectations with the first record, and like all of these things, it's happened to me subsequently. As soon as there's success, other people get involved. They want to change the formula. They can't leave the team alone, and I think that was one of the reasons why it didn't happen again. But he's such a talented guy, and out of all the people in the music business, he's the one that I probably see most of. Him and Rui de Silva. And it's just coincidence they happen to be from, like I said, from a dance field, but I'm not particularly like that myself, although I do make dance records sometimes, I think the reason why Berkshire is obsessed with Balearic, I think it's probably down to 2 factors. One was Phil Perry running Full Circle out of Colnbrook, and it was right at the beginning of the commercialization, if you like, and the change of dance music going from the underground to the overground, and pubs at the time closing at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, if I remember rightly, and people would go to this place in Colnbrook, where Andrew Weather would be playing one day, Phil Perry, Terry Farley, so all the sort of people that were local, because they're not really part of my panorama, that whole dance thing, of Gary Haishman and Terry Farley and all that kind of stuff, the whole Boyzone thing and Simon Eccleston, although I kind of knew them a bit, but it's not part of my own personal panorama. But the reason it went that way is because they were really influenced by what was going on in Ibiza, and the Alfredo approach to playing quite disparate things. Although they were, by that time, it wasn't so much below, it was more sort of acidy, acid house, if that they would call it, I guess. And it's that, and there was a film called Berkshire Goes Balearic, and that's why people think of this place as that. But it has to be said that the community centre in Slough, holding huge events. I think it actually did a Spectrum there at one point. You know, Danny Rampling and Oakenfold, all that sort of people playing in Slough, sort of nondescript working Mars bar town. That, you know, if you think about how many people have come from here that have contributed to the dance canon, you know, and it continues now. That kind of history continues now with people like Release Radio and what have you. That's so it's not a new thing. It's quite and also dance music's very accessible, working class. It's the release for the working class. I mean, I'm not suggesting for a second that there aren't, you know, that there's not sort of more highbrow academic versions of that. I think that Andrew was certainly part of that, you know, pushing it in a different area. You know, even Justin, my mate Justin Robertson, who, you know, people don't realise, but he's actually originally from sort of Wickham, Great Missenden, that sort of area. So he's really a local lad, although he now lives in West London. I'm actually doing a project with him at the moment. I can play some bits and pieces later. So it's, I think that's the reason why, because of all these other confluences. I've been working with Justin. That's to say that we've started a project which is yet to be finished. We're about 3 uncompleted tracks in, and then COVID hit and stuff. And I've been kind of pretty busy with lots of other things, and I guess we need to synchronise the diaries again. It'll be a kind of dubby, electro dub, synthy thing. The drums, I think, are quite dubby, real kits, and it'll be chuggy. I guess it's fair to say there's a sort of Andrew Weatherall influence to it. I think he would have approved, and me and Justin just have to get the sort of book the diary time to finish it off. I think we'll stay where we are with these 3 tracks and see how it goes. You know, release them, see what if it's got legs as a project. It's certainly good fun to do with him, because he's my kind of guy. We talk a lot. We compare notes a lot. I've interviewed him a few times for my radio show on Portobello Radio, actually. And our conversations are usually about creativity and inspiration, and we both work the same way. In a lot of extent, a lot of research done. Justin, you know, he does art now and writes books and stuff, so he's a bit of a Renaissance man. You know, I like being multiplex as well in what I do, you know, whether it's, you know, visuals or making videos or that kind of thing, although I'm appallingly bad at it. I guess what I like is narrative, telling narratives, and that's the essence of our similarity, and that's why, you know, it'll work. I think even if it's not commercially successful, then I don't think we're bothered, really. We just want to be able to tell stories through the oral spectrum.